Hello and welcome to BusyWorksBeats.com. Today we continue the music theory series right here at BusyWorksBeats.com/music theory. Today I want to share with you 3 melody tricks I love to use, and they're super easy to apply. So let's start first by building a chord and breaking it down into its melodic portions. Now I want you to understand what a chord actually is. A chord is a harmonization of a melody. So just like there's a lead singer in a choir, and then the choir backs them up, that's what a chord really is. It's just the backing up of a melody. So that's why when you break down your chords into melody, it sounds so, it sounds so correct. So let's pick a sound from our library here. I'm just going to click on a random sound just to show you how it doesn't really matter which instrument, but this could be a weird sound. Okay, that works. Okay, let's open up the piano roll. And let's start with a nice chord that has at least 4 notes. The reason we're using 4 notes is because we want it to have a bit of variation. You could use 3-note chords like D minor. And here we'll do the common technique, which is to play the chord in your left hand and then play the melody in your right hand. So let's start with D minor, D, F, A, and I'm just showing you that chords or harmonies are just the backing up of a melody. So if you want to get quickly started with your melody, for example, if you had a chord progression, you could use that top note in your chord progression to get started. What our ear is listening for the most part, at least 90% of the time, is the top note of a chord. When you play a chord progression, what do you hear? You're listening to that E. So listen closely. You're listening to that E. That's the focal point of the chord. So that's like the melody inside of the chord. So usually speaking, the top note of a chord is going to guide your ear through a chord progression. And now what do you hear? Dun. You hear B. So it went from E to B. So we're really listening to that top note for the most part. Again, it could change depending on chord inversions and all these simple things, but let's start here. So let's use that technique. Let's start on A. Now the reason I'm doing it this way is so you can see that see what note we're using, so it doesn't get too convoluted with notes overlapping in the chord. Okay, so we're only going to use D, F, and A here. Now another big mistake before we get into this technique is that people just aren't listening to their brain. Your brain has melodies. Now I could just whistle randomly. Now that in that melody, there's, pitch slide or legato, and there's a couple things that you just don't get when you're using a computer naturally, but you get these things when you may play on certain instruments. So I just want you to understand that using the computer hinders you to a degree because it doesn't automatically know that you want to create vibrato on a note, or that you want certain notes to slide or have certain velocity changes. So there's a lot you have to apply to the computer to get these realistic melodies, and that's the main reason people are having problems with their melody. Okay, let's repeat that for 2 bars. Let's hold the chord out. Now let's change the chord. And I'm just going to transpose the chord to save time, and we're going to make that ACE. So again, same technique, starting with the top note, E. Now this is not a hard rule, it's just something to get used to. It's not a hard rule. Now all I'm doing is playing the top note, and then playing the root note, and then the third. Now I'm speaking music theory in E's just to kind of define what we're doing here. So it's top note, which is E, then the root note, which should be A, and then the third, which is C of this chord. Now I'm not here to confuse you. The point is, there's a structure to this. And now that sounds like a melody. Now, of course, when you get into higher levels of music production, you're going to want it changes and all these things, but this is a way to get started. Splitting the chord. Let's go over another melodic technique, which is to add a fifth. Now, this is great for, again, harmonizing your melody. So whenever you add 2 tones, or at least 2 tones, which a fifth is technically, it's not technically a chord. Chords are 3 notes or more. We're not trying to define things and be super specific. But the point is, a fifth is really just 2 notes playing, but it sounds like a harmony. And harmonizing just means somebody else is singing with you, enforcing that harmoniously sounding sound. I just used words to define words. So let's pull this down. Now, the fifth of D is going to be A. Now, the reasoning behind that is when you map out the scale and do all these things. Now, we're not going to get into the explanation of a fifth because we do that in our courses. We have a whole course on the circle of fifths and the circle of fourths, and there's secrets behind it. It's much more than just memorizing the wheel. There's so much behind that. So that's at busyworksbeats.com. What I want to do here is just add the fifth, which is A. Now, this may sound cool, or it may sound... it might sound too bright. So I'm just going to pull that down an octave. So it's the same note, just down an octave. You can barely hear it because it's so lush of a sound. So let me see if I switch out the sound. Will we be able to hear this clear? Now again, these are random patches, so I don't know what's going to sound cool and what's not. These are very bright tones. I'm trying to find a tone that's not so elongated and bright. And that sounds like a chord. Let's just go back to where we were because we're not finding luck in the other one. So I want you to listen here. There's really two tones happening. And let's add the fifth for F. In this case, it's going to be C. Let's pull that down an octave. Actually, let's just get rid of this. How about that? Now, the thing about fifths is that they perfectly harmonize. It always sounds good, per se. That's why they call it perfect fifths. So they will always work when you're writing melodies. So try adding fifths every now and again. You don't have to do it. It's just a technique. Let's do it here. The fifth of A is going to be E, and the fifth of C is going to be G. Now, another technique for melody is to go up and down the scale. So in this case, we have to define what a scale is. So, to cut the long story short, we're just going to use all the white notes here, okay? Because we're assuming that we're using all the white notes. That's not always the case. It can change. And you can even have different scales within one song. So never think that you're locked to one key or one scale, especially in jazz, man. They jump around like crazy. So let's start here. So we're using all the white notes. And all I want to do here is just go up and down the scale. So I'm going to go from one white note to the next white note, or just in that general direction. So if I need to fill up space, okay, so now you have something to work with. Now, am I saying that's the melody I would use all the time? No. Now, I'm just trying to throw all the techniques on this specific example. They apply in different scenarios. For example, in trap music, you're not necessarily going to use fifths because it sounds too perfect. It sounds too released. In music, you have tension and release. And when you perfect fifths, it sounds too resolved. Whereas in trap music, you want a lot of tension and a lot of anger. So you generally want to stay away from the fifths and things that sound complete. So, there's so many rules to this that change. At the end, I'm going to change it out to match. Now, in FL Studio, if you're lucky enough to have this DAW, you have a plugin called Gross Beat. So whenever you're feeling stuck, just throw in half speed and just listen. Or you can blend the two. So that's another technique. So now it sounds super complex, even though it wasn't that complex. You get the idea from there. So let's wrap it up. I just wanted to show you a couple melody tricks. It's busyworksbeats.com. And again, we have full courses on this stuff, not just one video, full courses on melody specifically, full courses on the circle of fifths and fourths and the secrets behind that, full courses on chord codes, and so much more right at busyworksbeats.com. So you want to join now as a premium member? It's busyworksbeats.com.